What's up everyone? Lance Hedrick here, and I'm here alone in Flavortown, wondering why this town is so freaking desolate. I don't understand it. So today I'm gonna show you the road to Flavortown because it is so nice here. Now, of course, I'm not saying your coffee always sucks, but we both know that there are a lot of times you get stuck in a rut. You kind of plateau with your coffees and you're like, oh, I'm just not enjoying it as much right now. What is going on? How can I reset? What steps do I take in order to make coffee exciting again? So today I'm gonna give you 7 helpful tips that are gonna help you reset when you run into these issues. Consider your coffee. If you're struggling to make a coffee taste good, that coffee just likely isn't a good coffee for you. A good coffee for you should taste good even if you don't have the greatest brew, you don't have the greatest recipe, you don't have the greatest brew method for that coffee, whatever it might be. If it is a coffee that is good and is good for you, it's gonna taste okay even if you kind of mess it up. Review what coffees you're using. Are these still in your ballpark of flavor preferences? Should you try something else? Has your palate kind of changed? Not necessarily evolved, because that kind of implies a higher echelon of taste, but maybe it's shifted to one area or another. What do you typically brew? Is this the same as you typically brew? If it is, maybe try something else out. Get a little feisty. Find another local roaster to check out and see if they kind of, ring your bell a little bit better than the previous one. Who really knows? I don't know. That's why I'm saying this is one of 7 steps. Check out that coffee. Make sure it's something that is in the Flavortown for you, if you know what I'm saying, okay? Now the second one is a bit more difficult, can get a bit more convoluted, and is definitely something only really true enthusiasts are really gonna wanna look into, but that is looking at your water. If you live in a city where they do a chlorine treatment every week or every other week, then every so often you're gonna have heavy chlorine in your coffee and it's gonna taste really off. Or sometimes, like in Los Angeles, they frequently have massive changes in the total ppm of their water. You will have huge swings in how your coffee is tasted, whether it could be chalky and dull to whatever it might be. Taking very seriously your water is going to greatly level up your coffee. I know that this sounds intimidating. You're like, my water, dude, come on, let me just get it from the sink. It's just freaking coffee. Well, you wouldn't be on my channel if it was just freaking coffee, because we are coffee nerds here, all right? We're people here trying to squeeze the elixir out of this seed. We're wanting it to be as good as possible. So you need to be checking out your water. It's super easy to kind of make your own water at home with simple off-the-shelf salts. But instead of going too into that, you can always check out the Barista Hustle notes on that, Jonathan Gagne's website on that, which I can link resources down below. Now, there are a lot of great companies out there that have created products in order to help you improve your water, and I actually co-founded one of them. To just mention some of these, because they are great options for people just starting to kind of lessen the intimidation factor of improving your water. Some of those would be like Lotus, which again, I helped co-found, so I definitely have a massive bias there. You have Apex Lab, which is another type of concentrate, but they're mixed recipes made by a fellow coffee professional and friend, Simon Gauthran, down in Australia. You have Perfect Coffee Water, which is a kind of powder treatment you can do to your water. You have Third Wave Water, which is one of the OGs of this kind of movement. You have Aqua Code, and you have Peak Coffee Jug, which is from Maxwell Cullen and Dashwood, who co-wrote the Water for Coffee book. There are loads of options out there on the market. Now, the thing to know is if you get into these, you will definitely either need like distilled / deionized type of water, or you'll need to get a zero water pitcher, which strips minerals from your water, which can be very wasteful with the filters, but it's one of those things where you're gonna have to kind of weigh what is kind of worth it. Of course, there are now tabletop reverse osmosis systems that you can look at. I know there's one kind of startup out in France called Skooma, where it's a countertop one, and you can take the wasted water that's been ejected from the machine that's not in the final bit. You can use it like water plants and things like that. In the end, there are remedies in order to deionize or demineralize your water with reverse osmosis or these types of jugs, these pitchers. The third is looking at your ratio, your dose, the depth of your bed. Maybe you're brewing a little too diluted for your palate, or a little too strong. Maybe your beds are a little too thin, and now that kind of unbalanced structure or that hollowness that you might get from a thinner bed is coming to fruition. Or maybe your bed is too deep and you're getting too much of a stratified extraction and you're not enjoying the lessened evenness of your brew. This is something to really take seriously because a simple change in dose in a V60 can be a huge difference in the bed depth or in a Kalita wave or in a basket with your espresso. Taking into account your ratio and playing around with that can be a great benefit, or your coffee dose in general. You can maintain your ratio and just increase your coffee dose, and you're gonna have a completely different experience. Kind of like with V60s, people are always curious, well, I usually do 15 grams to 250 grams, but you know, it's seeming lacking lately, or this one coffee just doesn't work with it. What if I updose? Can I just copy the recipe and just kind of updo everything? It won't really work like that due to the bed depth. It might, but there's no guarantee that you're gonna have a similar outcome. You're gonna need to redial some of those parameters in order to account for the increased bed depth if you move up to, say, 25 grams of coffee. Fourth one, your brew method. I am not one to tell you to go out and buy all these different brew methods, and that's why I don't really cover many drippers and things on this channel because, well, I don't really think there's as much difference as people like to give them credit. In me and my household, I use a V60. Now, if I want flat bottom, I may switch over to like, I don't know, the Oria or something like that. But to be honest with you, 99.9% of my brews are V60. The cup quality it makes me is what I want, and it's very consistent. But some of you, again, could have changing preferences. You may want to have another dripper in order to switch it up, in order to maybe get more body from something that might be flat bottom, or you might want to have that no bypass type of thing. If someone's doing a lot of French presses, maybe it's starting to get a little, you know, kind of dirty to you. That silt is a little too much. You want to clean it up. Do something with a paper filter. If you take a French press and then you pour it through a V60 paper or some sort of filter paper, you're going to clog it within half a second. Those little microparticles are clogging the pores of the paper and it's not allowing it to pass through. So maybe this is something that you want to take into account, is switching up the brew method from a French press to a Kalita or to a V60, Oreo, whatever it might be, in order to expand your options and see if maybe the coffee is great, your water is great, it's just kind of the brew is not something you're preferencing. A lot of people just keep trying and failing, and you know what they say, if you keep trying the same thing over and over again expecting different results, you're crazy. Now next is related to that, but it's a little bit more granular, and it's something that I think a ton of people don't take into account, which is the filter paper you're using or the basket you're using for espresso. I tend to use pretty much every day the T90 medium dark roast Café filter paper. I have found that this one is the thickest with the most texture and with the most consistent hole pattern, as even of an extraction as I can get, while also allowing fines to fill in the paper filter without clogging it. Some people will get that light roast version from Café. This one actually slows the drawdown massively. It'll add another 30 seconds to a minute to your pour over. This may be causing more muted brews or longer brew times than you're wanting, and you may want to kind of switch it up. There are great options out there like Cibarist. I would rather spend a lot less money and get fantastic brews, though I do think Cibarist is probably some of the best in the game. Filter papers are an easy thing to kind of buy a $7 pack of something different. Try it and see if that's improving your brew. Same thing with baskets. With baskets, we have all different shapes and sizes. They're not all made equal. You have kind of more regular baskets where you have very concentrated holes in the center where there's a big wide area around the edge. And you go for something that has holes kind of all the way to the edge, which is going to open up extraction a lot and give you a completely different profile. You can play with more shallow baskets, more deep baskets. You can play with ones that have more beveled edges or ones that are more flat on the sides. You can play with ones that have mesh inside. If you don't want to buy another basket, just cut a circle out of a paper filter, put it in the bottom, and see if you prefer that. So there are a lot of ways you can play around with the medium through which the coffee is being filtered. Take a look at those, especially with paper filters, because they make a huge difference. All right, that's number 4. Again, let me reiterate, do not go out and buy something whenever you're in a rut. This is not what number 6 is about, but number 6 is taking into consideration your grinder and its output. Perhaps you had a mind-bending, paradigmatic shifting experience at a cafe with like a really nice grinder. Maybe they have like a Titus Nautilus or a hyper-aligned EK43, and you got the most clear shot of espresso or a filter coffee that was so tea-like and clear that you're like, oh, I need this, but at home you have like a niche or something along those lines, and now it's just not good enough for you. you can play around with what you have in trying to improve it, like slow feeding, for instance. You're allowing less heat damage and you're allowing a bit more uniform particle size distribution, and this may actually improve your cup of coffee to something where you don't need to get another grinder. You're just playing around with the dosing mechanism or playing around with the grind size of your grinder to achieve a different particle size distribution, because it greatly, greatly affects that final cup. Playing with your grinder, playing around with different techniques, playing around with grind sizes are all great ways to get out of a rut, to mess around, and to open up new flavors from a coffee. That brings us to number 7, and one that is, oh my goodness, so looked over, it's actually kind of mind-blowing, and that is cleanliness. Open up your kettle. Look inside. If it is not shiny metal, if you see any type of scale buildup, any type of sludge or anything at all, you gotta clean that bad boy. Toss some citric acid in there, toss some vinegar or something. Get that cleaned out. There are lots of guides online on how to clean these, but it's just simple. If you have an espresso machine, you've not cleaned it in a while, of course backflush, but also check and see if it's scaled up. And if you have a batch brewer at home, those scale very easily. I was recently with a friend and they were complaining that the brews recently had been tasting really muted and they were thinking it was their water, but in reality their batch brewer was just scaled to mess and back again. Like, you can't make good coffee with a horribly scaled up machine. It's gonna mute everything. You can even do a little whistle while you work, and you can call in the forest animals like that one Disney princess did. Cinderella maybe it was. No, it was Snow White, wasn't it? Snow White. And once you follow these 7 things, once you start considering your coffee, considering your water, your ratio, your brew method, your filtration, your grinder, and your cleanliness, you're gonna be right back on the road to Flavortown. And that is a place I have a residence in. And I wanna invite you over for a cup of coffee. So you've gotta make your mecca, your trip, your pilgrimage to Flavortown. And I'll see you there. And I'll give you a hug and we'll probably sing some songs because, you know, even if you don't like it when I sing, we're gonna sing songs together. I hope these 7 steps to glory are gonna help you find your way back to Flavortown because we've been missing you. The mayor called me the other day and he said, Lance, why are you just absolutely beating this dead horse of an analogy? And I said, man, I really don't know. So I think it's time to end this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, or if you enjoy any of my other content, please hit the like and the subscribe. And it all really helps me quite a bit. And I think that's all for today. So I hope you brew something tasty. Come back to Flavortown, and cheers.